Hey guys, it's Alex. I wanted to film a TBR for you of the books that I'm currently reading or about to read. And these are all library books because I have way too many checked out right now that I just need to focus on and get through so I can start reading my own books that I have too many of. These are about 2/3 thriller and maybe 1/3 nonfiction. So I was going to start with the thriller since that's what I've been reading most recently. I have The Imposter Bride by Nancy Richler. This is actually not a thriller. This is like sort of thriller-esque. It's about a woman post-World War II who shows up to be a bride for a man she's never met, winds up marrying his brother instead, and then abandons him and their daughter. And the story kind of centers around the daughter years later, as the daughter is trying to figure out like who her mother was and why she left. This book is Watching Edie by Camilla Way. It's about a woman has a friend who shows up from the past, and the friend is sort of not a good person or like planning to kill her or torture her or something. I'm not entirely sure, but it sounded really interesting. Another book I have is Missing Presumed by Susie Steiner. This is about a graduate student who goes missing and the search to find her. There are no clues, no nothing. She just randomly vanishes, so they start looking into her life and her erratic behavior and all of that, and I really do like books about missing people and such. Little Girl Gone by Jerry Schmidt is part of the Afton Tangler series, which I've never read, but they seem like the kind of books that can be read as standalones. Afton Tangler is a detective, and this book is about a baby who's been kidnapped, and the babysitter was assaulted, and now they're trying to find the baby, and they believe it's part of like a string of baby kidnappings. So high stakes as they try to save all the babies. It looks pretty interesting. I'm not entirely sold on this book, but it can be hard to find thrillers when you're just like randomly searching library shelves. So I try not to be too picky in the descriptions. Another book I picked up is Fractured by Kate Watterson. I haven't actually started this despite the bookmark in it, but it's about a cop who's investigating a serial killer, and I think it's just one of those stereotypical, the serial killer winds up being too close to home, and she becomes a new target, or her partner becomes a new target, and she's got life things going on too. It just looked pretty interesting. My last two thrillers are both by the same author. I have Second Life and Before I Go to Sleep, both by S.J. Watson. Before I Go to Sleep has no dust jacket, so it has no description on the book. I can only barely see the title on the spine because it's a library book, so I have not a single clue what this is about besides that it's a thriller. Second Life has a very limited description in it. It's one of those that's not really a description of the book, it's like a few quotes from the book. It's like, ooh, building intrigue, without actually telling you what the book's about. But from what I gathered, it's a woman who has a secret identity, and it threatens to destroy her life. And that's all I got. So I'm going into both of these books pretty much blind. I have about 6 nonfiction books that I'm planning to be reading soon. The first is Do No Harm by Henry Marsh. He is a brain surgeon, and this book is about his brain surgeries and like what he goes through in the hospital. And from what I've heard of this book, this is gonna make me terrified to ever have brain surgery. So I'm reading this with the belief that I will never need brain surgery, because this might scar me for life. I also have The Nazi Officer's Wife by Edith Hahn-Beer. This is about a Jewish woman in Nazi Germany who winds up marrying a Nazi officer. She gets a new identity and pretends to be a Christian woman, and it's about like the terror of her life as the Nazis are in control, and then her husband is kidnapped by the Soviets, so she's on her own again without protection, and with her daughter, I believe, or son, with her child. But it looked really interesting, and I love reading stories of the cultural aspect of Nazi Germany. Like, yes, the war and all, but like actually how people lived in that time. There was a book I was reading last summer that was about an American diplomat's family who lived in Nazi Germany, and it's just really fascinating to me. I also have Reading Lolita in Tehran by Azar Nafisi, which I started reading last summer, and I wound up having to return it to the library like 2 different times. This is about a woman, an English professor in Tehran who teaches a group of women like off the books, and they study like a lot of literature, a lot of feminist literature. Vladimir Nabokov has a chapter, and I did think about like trying to read all the books that are mentioned in here before reading this, because it is written by an English literature professor. In the end, I just decided I wanted to read this. I wanted to finish it because it was really good. Another book I picked up, which I didn't originally intend to pick up, was Thriller's 100 Must-Reads. And it's basically 100 thriller classics. It's edited by David Morrell and Hank Wagner. I only got this because the sky opened up when I was leaving the library, and it was pouring down rain so hard that I couldn't actually leave, and wound up staying for 20 minutes longer and killed time by looking at books. I'm sort of getting out of thrillers a little bit. Like, my interest is waning in them, and I'm more into looking more at nonfiction, but I did think like a list of like 100 really great classic thrillers for me to read would be interesting, hopefully. I might just end up like skimming this and not reading any of these, but we shall see. I also picked up When Broken Glass Floats by Chenrithi Him, which is about a girl who grew up under the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. It was most of her childhood, I believe. She was 16 when she eventually came to the US when the regime ended, and I really know nothing about the Khmer Rouge, and this looked like an interesting book, and I love memoirs, so hopefully this will wind up being really good. The final nonfiction book I picked up is The Lightless Sky by Gawali Pasarle. It's about a boy who escapes from Afghanistan and is a refugee and winds up traveling all over Europe to Turkey and Greece and France and Germany and Bulgaria, trying to get to England. And it looked really interesting. He's only 12 when he leaves. I don't know how long the rest of the story takes, but it looked like it was really interesting, and I've never read a memoir by a refugee, so hopefully this is a really interesting book. I have 2 other women's fiction books that I'm currently reading / listening to. One is an audiobook in my car. It's The 10th Circle by Jodi Picoult. So you can see my very large Jodi Picoult shelf over here. It's a reread for me, as all of my audiobooks are, and I'm enjoying it so far. The other book that I'm currently reading is One Moment One Morning by Sarah Rayner. I've pretty much only just started this, but it's a women's fiction book about 3 women who are connected by a death on a train. A woman's husband dies, and that woman, her best friend, and another woman who was with them sort of become intertwined after the event. So far, it's really interesting. Even if I'm not entirely sold on the storytelling yet, it's still early, and I'm hoping I enjoy it better later on. Those are the 15 books that I currently have out from the library. It's very excessive, but they all look like really good books, and I'm excited to read them and hopefully not have as many books checked out from the library in the near future. I don't have an exact timeline on this, but hopefully in the next month or 2, all of these will be done, and I can focus on the books that I own. Please let me know down below if you've read any of these, or if you're looking to read any of these, and what you thought of them. I know very little about any of them, so I always appreciate having people give me a heads up on these. Until next time.